Hi everyone. In this live session, we are going to learn two ways to do percents. What are the two ways you can do percents easily? Percent basically is one part out of 100. That's what it means. Per is for each and cent means it's 100. So it's one part out of 100. Out of 100. This is what is a percent. One part out of 100. For example, 1%. One part is 1%. 1% is how much? 1 out of 100. 1 out of 100. And that's also equal to 0.01 and in decimal. Okay, let's see some examples. Okay, this is considered as 50%. When you have, let's draw a circle, it's divided into, this is 50%, the half of the part. This is 50%. Now if you want to show as in 80%, so you will have, it will be just more than 75. This is 80%. This part is 80%. Okay, now let's see, what if you want to show 10.2%? So when you're showing 10.2%, it will just be like this. This part here is 10.2%. Okay, what about if you want to see how much is 76.5%? So let's draw that. So this part here, in this, it will be just a bit more than 75. So this part is 76.5%. That's how we represent percentages pictorially. Okay, now there are two ways to do percents. One way, the first way is proportion. We call it as proportion. Okay, what do we do in proportion? We write down the part and the whole number in the form of a ratio. Part over whole, part divided by whole is equal to percent divided by 100. This is how we find in proportions. Part over whole is equal to percent over 100. So this is called as a proportion where you have these two equivalent to each other. Now there is another way that is called as percent equation. So I'm going to write that down. That's called as percent equation. Okay, that's called as percent equation. This is the first one. This is the second one. So it's called as percent equation. Now in percent equation, what do we write? We write the part, it's just cross multiplied, nothing else. Part is equal to percent times whole. Percent multiplied by whole. That's it. So these are the two ways you can solve percentages easily, either using proportions or using percent equations where part is equal to percent times whole. Now let's try some examples on that. For example, if you have 37.5% of 48. So if you have 37.5% of 48. So how are we going to do that? 37.5 is just 37.5. I'm going to write using proportions. Part over whole. So what is our part? We don't know. So let us take it as n. Part is n. Whole is 48. Is equal to percent is 37.5%. That's 37.5 divided by 100. And what do? Just cross multiply. N times 100, that's 100n, is equal to 37.5 times 48, and that just gives you 100n is equal to 37.5 times 48 is 1800. Divide both sides by 100. You are just left with n is equal to 18. That's your answer. Okay, let's check out another example on that. For example, if you have now 62.5% of 88. Suppose if you have 62.5% of 88, how are you going to find that? So just write down part. The part we don't know, we are going to find that n over whole is 88 is equal to, what is our percent? 62.5. 62.5 over 100 out of 100. So now let's just cross multiply. That's 100n is equal to 62.5 times 88. What is 62.5 times 88? It's just 5,500. 100n is equal to 5,500. And divide both sides by 100. So the zeros here cancel out, zeros here crosses out, so n is equal to 55. That's your answer. Okay, let's see another example. For example, if you have 12.5% of 40, let's calculate that. So if you have 12.5% of 40. Okay, so how are we going to calculate? Using second method. Now we are going to use part is equal to percent times whole. So let's use this percent times whole. What is your part? We don't know. N is equal to, what is your percent? 12.5%. 12.5% times whole is 40. So you need to convert the percent to decimal first. 12.5 out of 100. This percent symbol changes to out of 100. That's equal to 12.5 divided by 100 times 40. It's just like that. So 12.5 over 100 is 1.25, 0.125. 0.125 times 40. So what are we going to get? N is equal to 5. That's it. Okay, now let's see another example. If you have, suppose if you have 87.25%, 87.25% of 72. If you have to calculate this, what are we going to do? 87.25% of 72. So we are just going to use part is equal to percent times whole. Let's see what are we going to get. So part is n, percent is 87.25%, times whole is 72. So your n is equal to 87.25 over 100. At percentage and decimal, it's just move the decimal to 2 slots towards left. So it becomes 0.8725 times 72. And your n is equal to 62.82. Either you can use calculator to check this out. Okay. So that's your answer. Whenever you're converting a percent to decimal, you just have to move the decimal 2 slots towards left. Why? Because suppose you have 87.25%. How are you going to convert it to decimal? Just change this percent symbol to out of 100. 87.25 divided by 100. Write down the numerator as it is, 87.25. Now check how many zeros are there in the denominator with 1. That's 2 zeros. So move the decimal 2 slots towards left. So you get a point here. So your answer is 0.8725. This is how you change a percent to decimal. So we have written 0.8725 times 72, and that's equal to 62.82. Okay, let's see another example. For example, if you have 2 and 2 to 1/10% of 226. Okay, so how are we going to calculate this? Okay, let's try the first method. Part over whole is equal to percent over 100. Part divided by whole is equal to percent divided by 100. So what is our part? N. Whole is 226. Let's write down, which is equal to percent is 2/110. How are you going to write 2/110 in terms of decimal? It's just 2.1. This is 1/10. That's 0.1. Add 0.1 to 2. That's 2.1. 2.1% out of 100. Okay, now let's solve this. So you just have 2.1 over 100. How do you solve that? N over 226 is equal to, you have to write down the same number, 2.1. See, it's 2.1. How many zeros are there in the bottom? In the denominator, 2 zeros. Move the decimal 2 slots towards left. So you have your decimal, and this slot is empty, so you put a 0. So it's 0.021, right? Okay, now you just cross multiply or multiply both sides by 226. 226, here also 226. So this and this gets cancelled out, so you're left with n. N is equal to 0.021 times 226 is 4.746. That's it. Okay, let's try out another example. For example, if you have you can do that by another method also. That was the first method what we used for this one. Let's try out 87.5%. 87.5% of 96. Let's try this one. So it's part over whole. Whole is 96 is equal to, how much is the percent? 87.5 out of 100. All right, so now what are we going to do? Just cross multiply things. You can cross multiply to make it easier. So 100 times n, 100n is equal to 87.5 times 96. What is 87.5 times 96? You're going to get 8,400. So you have 100n is equal to 8,400. Divide both sides by 100. Why you're dividing both sides by 100? To isolate n. Yes, you need to isolate n. So here zeros crosses out, so n is left as 84. So that's equal to 84. All right, so if you want to try, you can try out some examples on this. For example, if you want to try out one last example, I'm going to give you 37.5% of 24. So you can use part is n over whole is 24 is equal to 37.5 is 37.5 out of 100. Now just cross multiply things. As I told you, 100n is equal to 37.5 times 24. And what is 37.5 times 24? It's simply 900. 100n is equal to 900. Divide both sides by 100 to isolate n. So cross out the zeros. So you're left with n is equal to 9. So the answer, 37.5% of 24 is 9. Alright, if you like this session, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Do leave a comment in the comment box. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care.